Good morning. I hope all of you are having a great day so far. I have to admit, this is my second time recording this video. I made the mistake of when I was saving this video, instead of clicking downloads, I picked desktop. Because of that, you could only hear the audio. You were not able to see me, and I was not able to upload it on YouTube. So I'll try to make this video a little bit shorter than what the original was. So today we're going to go, this is going to be session 2, and I'm going to go ahead and just get ready. I'm just going to pull it up so we're ready to go. So today we're going to be focusing on lessons 5 through 8. And again, they're set up mostly the same way as the first session, and then the strategies are going to have text suggestions from the authors. They have it for every lesson, but I'll try to focus more on it this session. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. So the first lesson that I'm going to talk about today, or strategy, is lesson 5, and it's a lesson on exploring concepts in our students' lives. The lesson is supposed to be for one day, according to the authors. And the goals that the authors came up for this lesson is students can discuss concepts important to their lives and experiences, and students can write and illustrate their inner conversations. So this book is set up exactly the same way. The format has not changed, even though some of them are 2-day lessons. It's still the same format, which is what I love. So I'm going to show you a picture of it. Try to get it in. So again, it's set up to where it explains to you why the text matters. It includes resources and materials. It includes the why and what. It includes an assessment for students to be able to complete at the end of it. And it also has that little how-to guide that shows you how to release some of the responsibility to the students. Okay? So for this lesson, it's wanting us to use the Peace Book by Todd Parr, and it explains where you can find this book, and it's actually at the back of this book, at the end of the book. And during our last session, I will show you that. And it's really neat that they've already included all of the text that you need for each of these lessons, so you don't have to worry about trying to find the text. Okay. Oh, and also the assessment that the authors want the students to be able to do is share their ideas and expand their understandings of important issues and ideas. So we're going to get started, and the layout's the same way. Section 1 is connect and engage, and that is where you're going to have your students explore notions of a big idea or concept and record them on Post-its to stick to an anchor chart. So you're going to create an anchor chart, and you're going to go over this, and students are going to be able to write their thoughts on it. So again, if you go to the step-by-step, the framework of it, you're going to notice that on the left side and right side, it's going to have teacher notes and suggest what you should do. So for example, when it says, it'll say, today we're going to be reading a book about some big ideas about blank, whatever topic that you're going to be focusing on. It depends on what content area you're going to focus on. And you would say this as well. When I hear the word blank, whatever word you come up with, I'm thinking blank. Here's where you're going to allow your students to do a think, pair, share. They're going to think about it for a minute, turn to their neighbor, and pair up and talk about that idea, and then you're going to let each pair share their idea. And they're going to answer that question, what do you think about? And I'm sorry, my dog has decided to get up and play now. In the last video, she was super quiet asleep on the couch. I do apologize. So After you do the connect and engage, they combine section 2 and it's model and guide. So here you're going to begin reading that read aloud, the piece book, and you're going to stop and let kids talk about their ideas throughout the book. So you're going to pause and ask questions and have students answer those and come up with their own ideas about it. And like I said, you'll continuously read it. And you're going to ask students to write and draw what they're thinking about. Daisy, stop. And they're going to, whatever they're thinking in their head on the Post-it notes, you're going to be able to, write that on that anchor chart that they were talking about. Okay. After that, you're going to let the kids share their Post-it notes. So whatever they were thinking about as you were reading that story and they were writing it down or drawing it down, you're going to let them share it and put that on the anchor chart. Once you've done that, you're going to let your students collaborate or practice independently, meaning that you can do it, you can let them pair up and do it, or they can do it by themselves, and you're going to let them go off and create a think sheet. And of course, you're going to guide what you expect them to do on the think sheet, and then you are going to go around and facilitate the learning, making sure that they are doing it correctly. And if they're struggling, this is where you can step in and really redirect them so they are able to complete it. So once they've completed this, which was section 3, section 4 is what that's supposed to say, is share the learning. So you're going to let them share. You're going to let them come up to the front of the classroom, or you're going to let them form a circle, and they are just going to share what they have written down on their papers or on their Post-it notes. After that, you're going to let you as the teacher are going to reflect on the lesson and decide whether they have achieved what you wanted them to achieve. And if some are still struggling with it, that's when you're going to try to do a small group lesson, or even ask your Title I teacher and see if she can assist you with this. And I'm sure she wouldn't care one bit. And for the assessment, that think sheet was mainly their assessment, being able to write that down, their own thoughts based off that book that you read to them. Okay, we're on strategy or lesson 6. This is about reading to answer questions. So again, the authors recommend that you break the lesson down into just one day's worth. However, if you need to work on it 2 or 3 days, you go for it. You do what's ever best for you. And then the goals of this lesson is students will read to record facts in books. Students will take notes in their own words and will be able to summarize new information. So again, lesson 6 is set up the same as the other 5 lessons, the 5 lessons before it. And again, it has the why the text matters, the resources and materials, the why and the what, and the how-to guide. And then the assessment for this is that students will summarize information and think about it. So again, this is broken down into one day. Again, you can change it if you need to. The first section, like all the other sections of every lesson, is connect and engage. So you're going to introduce the topic and define key terms. So if you're focusing this on social studies or science or reading, you're going to maybe ask essential questions, and then whatever definitions, key terms that are going to be important, you're going to want to go ahead and define those for students so they are aware, and this will help activate their knowledge. So you might say, today we'll be reading an article called such and such. So depends if you're teaching science, social studies, or reading, you're going to start out with that, and then you're going to go over those key terms with them. And the lesson or the text that they want you to use with this lesson is called Saving Sea Turtles by Heather Anderson. There's 2 different versions, and the one that they want you to use is in the back of the book, which I think is great that it's already there for you. You don't have to worry about finding it. It's just right there, ready to go when you're ready to teach this lesson. And after you have connected and engaged with your students, you're going to model and guide. Now here, in this lesson, they are combining 2 sections into one. So the way you're going to do this is you're going to establish an important question for your students to answer or to investigate. This is why I think it would be more related towards social studies or science if they're going to investigate something. Once you explain the topic and you ask that important question, you're going to model how to read an article, how to paraphrase it, and you as the teacher are going to record important information that you find as you're reading that article. And you're going to do this on Post-it notes. Again, this might be hard for every student to see, so instead of writing it on Post-it notes, I would take just big chart paper and write it down. That way everybody can see what you're recording as you are reading the article. Because again, they're going to be doing this on their own shortly, so you want to be able to make sure they understand exactly what they're supposed to be doing. So on here it says, if you use the Post-it notes, it says place it in the important information or thinking column on chart paper. So again, I just think it's best if you just write important information at the top of a chart paper and you record that information on that big chart, just so everybody can see it. And you put that on your board or a wall, anything like that. After that, you're going to guide the students through a read aloud, and you're going to ask them to write important question or important information that they have learned about throughout the read aloud. And you're going to let them record that on their little Post-it notes. They can draw pictures if it'll help them, but you want them to be able to record that information that they believe is very important towards the article. Again, students might say, well, I'm going to have trouble, Miss, I don't know how to spell this. Can you tell me how to spell this? This is where you just tell them to use their secret stories and spell it the best that they can, and that you can, that you can help them later on. But right now that the spelling doesn't matter. So after you've done this, you're going to let them collaborate or practice independently, meaning the activity that they're getting ready to complete, they can do it on their own or they can work in partners. It's your choice, whatever you think would be best for your students. Now, you've prepped them, they know how to record this information. You're going to have the kids now go read an article similar to Saving Sea Turtles on their own or with their partner, and then you're going to have them to clarify their thinking by recording that information on their own. So what you just did in the model and guide section, they're going to do it now on their own. And you're going to walk around the room as students are completing this to ensure that they're doing it correctly. And this is where you can redirect students if they are struggling and they're not really doing what they're supposed to be doing. After they've completed their very own, they're going to be able to share their learning. So whatever article they read, they're all going to read the same article, and then you can let them share what they put on their recording sheet. And I think that'll be great because some students may not have thought about that while they were doing their own thinking, and this would help them learn even more about the article, which I think is great. It's kind of like peer teaching in a sense, because they're going to be able to see what other students thought was important, and they're going to realize that they needed to include that as well, and that might help them remember it for the future. Okay, and then the assessment, you can create your own assessment, but that thinking sheet where they had to draw the illustrations and record their information, what they thought was important, could also be your form of assessment. Strategy number 7 is having students to synthesize information. Again, this lesson can be done in one day according to the authors. And the goals that the authors have created are students can summarize and synthesize information in original ways from their notes from the previous lesson. Students can organize and categorize information on a mind map to expand their thinking on the topic. So, again, I'll show you the very quickly, and we'll start talking about this. So this is important that they can take notes. So that last lesson really is important that they're able to record that important information, because that is taking notes basically. And this lesson is requiring them to do that as well. Again, this lesson includes the text matters, resources and materials, the why and what, the how-to on the side, and the assessment. The assessment for this particular lesson is students will create illustration, diagrams, and other visual features that communicate information and complement kids' written text on the mind map. So in other words, whatever notes that they have taken that they think is important, they're going to be able to categorize that information as well as draw pictures that correlates with what they have written down on the paper. Again, you're going to begin with section 1 where you connect and engage with your students. You want to introduce a mind map to students, so they might not be familiar with this specific strategy. You're going to basically explain what a mind map is. You're going to show what it looks like, describe what it's like, and I'll just quickly tell you what it recommends to tell your students. It says, let's take a look at this big poster. It's called a mind map. It's a big map in which this case is a collection of lots of information about a topic that we organize and illustrate. So you're going to organize that important information, and then you're going to have pictures to go along with it. You're going to draw those pictures. And students love to draw, especially my second graders, so I know my kids would be pumped about this. Okay, and then you're going to go and explain that a mind map has the big main idea of what you're going to be talking about, like the big topic, is going to go directly in the middle of that mind map. And keep in mind, this is on a poster board, so it's going to be right in the middle. And from that, this big idea, there's going to be different arms or stems that goes with the big main idea. Those arms is where you're going to begin sorting that information and putting them into categories. And once you've put in that important information in those categories, you're able to draw pictures to help go along with what you are thinking about as you record that important information. So once you've connected with your students and kind of activated their prior knowledge of what they might know of the map, then you're going to model and guide this for your students. So you're going to show kids how to organize information on a mind map. So you're going to have a pre-made mind map, and you are going to show them how to categorize that information and put it in the different categories for the different arms. And you're going to draw pictures that go along with your thoughts. Okay, after you've modeled and guided the students to do this, and you would pull them in at some points to say, well, where do you think this information would go? Which arm would it go under? That type of thing, just so they're aware of how to do it, so when they go to do it on their own, they don't have any issues. The next section is to collaborate. So in this case, students are going to work in groups, maybe groups of 3 and 4. Again, I'd probably just stick with my pods. And then you want them to be in control of their learning. So at this point, I would let them choose where they want to work in the classroom. You know, something by a simple choice, like letting them choose where they want to sit. Do they want to do it at their desk? Do they want to do it in the floor? Do they want to do it at the table? That type of thing. When you are able to give them a little bit of a choice, they are able to be well, not able, they're going to be more motivated to do it. They're going to be more excited about it because they kind of feel like they're in control of their learning. Now, again, for each group, they're going to receive a large poster board like the one that you had on the board, and you are going to explain to them what this mind map is about. So this book recommends that you could also use the same text as the last lesson, which is Saving Sea Turtles by Heather Anderson. So you could use this text for this lesson as well. And you would have your students to create their own mind map. Make sure that you would tell them the big map. For second graders, you would choose to write down what the big idea is because, you know, they might interpret it differently. So you want to do, the first thing you want to do is tell them what the big main idea is, and then you can let them go from there. You can let them come up with the important information, and you can let them draw the arms and let them categorize what they think needs to go. Now, in my opinion, for second graders, you would have to walk around the room and kind of direct them about how to categorize it. Now, you wouldn't necessarily tell them what words to put, but you might say what categories each arm should be about, and then you would let them write the words and pictures to go along with that. You wouldn't do it completely directly, but you would kind of talk them through it so they have about the right idea of what to do. Once you do that and the students have had time to complete their mind maps, you would then let them share their learning. You might let every group come up and let them present their poster to the class. And similar to the last lesson, I said maybe other students were not aware that some of the information they wrote down was important. They might say, well, we didn't know that was important. And they wouldn't have known if the other group wouldn't have presented their poster board. So I just think that's great. Again, you know, students sometimes learn best from each other rather from the teacher because students are just able to break it down for certain students. So I think that's a great way to include their peer learning. And this is a way you could assess them. Were they on the right track for this lesson with that poster board? If so, I would use that to determine whether they've learned it or not. And again, it's important as a teacher that you reflect on the lesson and determine whether students have learned that or they need to be retaught the skill. Okay, we're on the last strategy, which is lesson 8 in the book. And this is about discovering the why in cause and effect books. Now, this is something that we talk about all the time with our students. I know we're constantly talking about cause and effect to them. We have specific stories throughout the different units and journeys that talks about cause and effect. And so I felt like this, I was really connected to this specific lesson plan just because we talk about cause and effect so much. And I'm constantly looking for new ideas on how to teach cause and effect. Because, you know, just because it works for some students, it doesn't work for all students. So the lesson that they have put in here, I think will really help with comprehension of cause and effect for students. And again, it's set up the same exact way. I'll go ahead and show you the picture. Daisy. Okay, so again, it explains why the text matters, the resources and the materials, the why and the what, the how. And the assessment for this lesson is very neat, and I really think students can express their creativity through this. And in fact, you could even collaborate with the art teacher and see if they can work on this during art class one day, because, you know, they'd really be able to express their thoughts and ideas. So the assessment for this is to have students create their own cause and effect books. And I thought that was so cool. I've never thought to do something like that. So like I said, I'm really excited about this lesson. So we look at the steps. They're the same. You can, like I said, they say you can put this into a one-day lesson, but in my opinion, for the assessment part, the cause and effect books, I would probably give them a couple of days to complete that because second graders love to draw. They are constantly asking to draw when they're finished their work or during recess. If we're indoors, they want to draw. Anytime they get a chance to draw, they are wanting to do it. And I think they would really connect with this lesson and they would want to do a really good job because they love to draw so much. So section 1, you connect and engage. So you're going to introduce the concept of cause and effect by talking about something, a cause that makes you happy, which would be the effect. So in this case, I always try to use grades. Like a good grade makes me happy. So I would always say, explain at the beginning, what happens if you go home and you study your spelling words and you read your book every day before the test? And most of the time they said you'll get an A on your test. And that makes everybody happy. I think a good grade just makes everybody happy. So that's an example that I would use. But of course, you could use different ones. And so you connect and engage. And at this point, I would definitely make sure that students know what cause and effect means. I would define those terms, even though we do it all the time. I would still define those terms with them, and I would use keywords with them to help them really determine, oh, this is the cause and oh, this is the effect. Once you've connected and engaged, you're going to model and guide your students. So you're going to, the book recommends you assign a word keeper for cause and effect. So this person would be a student that you can rely on, that you know is going to pay attention and follow along with you with whatever you're doing. Now, and they're just going to write these words down as you go over them, like what a cause is, what an effect is, some words that go along with it. That was something that you went over in the connect and engage section. After you've assigned that person, then you're going to do a read aloud, which for this lesson, they recommend the book What Do You Do When Something Wants to Eat You by Steve Jenkins. And so you could definitely use this book to model and guide cause and effects because it has many causes and effects throughout the story. So you would read a little bit of the story and identifies a cause and effect that happened in the book to students. So that's you modeling it. And then after you've done that, you're going to read some more and then you're going to pause again and you're going to have students to identify the causes and effects for the rest of the story. And you would model how to illustrate a cause and effect book. After you've read What Do You See When Something Wants to Eat You, then and you have identified all the causes and effects and you've gone over what the cause was and why the effect was, then you're going to model how to complete a cause and effect book. So you would use blank computer paper, or you might do it on the board, anything like that. But you would explain what causes and effects are in your own book, whichever causes and effects you want to choose, and then you would show them how to draw pictures that go along with it. I'm not an artist, and my kids know I'm not an artist, so they would know that I would try my best to draw it, but they're going to realize that I can't really draw what I'm talking about, but I'll try my best to have the picture reflect what I'm actually saying. And again, so you can ask your art teacher if students can work on the drawing part during art class and maybe work on the words part during reading time. So I just think that would be a great way to collaborate with your art teacher and work together with that, and that would help with building relationships for sure. After they've finished working on that independently, you're going to give the students the opportunity to share the learning. So you're going to let them maybe take an afternoon maybe a Friday afternoon after they've worked hard on their reading test or in spelling test, and you would just let them each take the time to read, to do their cause and effect book, like read it and talk about the pictures and just show their learning. And again, you wouldn't have to do that in one day. You could even break that up into 2 days if needed, especially when you have a classroom full. It might be best to just do 2 days, but that's something that students are really going to look forward to completing. So after that, of course, you will reflect and assess. I would just use my to assess whether students understand cause and effect by using their cause and effect books. If they have legit causes and effects, then I know they have learned that skill. If I have students that tend to be struggling with that, I would definitely pull them during senior time and work more one-on-one with them to ensure that they know how to do it. Or I would even ask Title I to help me out, especially if it was like a group of 3 or 4 and they're typically my struggling students. So that is the end of session 2. And again, we talked about lessons 5 through 8. I told you that last one had me really excited to talk about, which you could probably tell. If you have any questions or comments about this session, please message me. Or if you want to give me feedback, that would be awesome as well. Again, the second 4 strategy is also concentrate on social studies, science, and reading. If you wanted to include math, you would do it by your word problems. And that might be a little difficult to do for some of those lessons, but again, if we work hard enough, we're going to be able to make sure that we are getting this reading across the curriculum, which is what this book is basically about. And also, I think these lessons helped out with those learning or thinking strategies, which is what one of the main goals of the book is to do with students, is to have them use those thinking strategies. All right, guys, so this is the end of session 2. Again, if you have any questions or comments, just let me know. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I hope this video is okay. Again, I'd already recorded one and it sounded pretty great, but it didn't save my video part. It just saved the audio. And I apologize for Daisy barking throughout it, but that's real life. So I cannot wait to share the last session with you. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Bye.